So their plan now is price caps. We are going to implement price caps. All right, how are they going to implement price caps? The U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen proposed to tackle the issue with price cap. The idea is that the EU, UK, which are currently trying to hamper Russian oil sales by banning insurance for cargo ships that transport oil, would lift the sanctions for those countries that accepted to only buy Russian oil at an agreed upon maximum price. Officials say that Russia and oil-producing partner countries are struggling to find insurance for tankers, meaning there could be leverage to enforce a price cap in exchange for sanctions relief. Right here, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said Friday that the proposal will, quote, play a role at the G7 summit, unquote, which Germany hosts from Sunday to Thursday. Now, they are agreeing. They basically came up with a proposal to do this and say they're agreeing to this. How are you going to force Russia to sell you a product at a discounted price? How are you going to do that? Now, the way they're talking about is basically using sanction power right here, which are currently trying to hamper Russian oil by banning insurance for cargo ships that transport Russian oil. All right. Why can't Russia come up with its own insurance? Meaning, how does that basically stop? Peer-to-peer. If I want to work with India, if I want to work with Africa, if I want to work with Brazil or one of the other countries, if I want to do that, how? Why do you believe that those countries can't come up with other insurance schemes in order to allow the shipping to take place between their various countries? Why do you think that? On top of that, why do you believe that Russia is forced to sell you anything? The drop in oil by 60%. Look, I think that's a political thing, right? It's a nod. Hey, this can go to zero. Keep fucking with us. It can go to zero. The pipeline going down to zero for 10 days of scheduled maintenance. Again, hint, hint, keep fucking with us. And now you're basically saying, okay, we're going to try to set and force you to sell us a product at a certain price. That's what we're going to try to force. What's going to be the response? The response is most likely going to be, well, you're not going to get it from us at all. I mean, they've been making $20 billion a month more, basically money hand over fist. And they've been able to find additional suppliers around the globe, meaning there are other people who would get that product. And they would be able to work out relationships in order to get their hands on that particular product, build infrastructure, all of that stuff. This issue is specific to the West. Macron wanted to have a global price cap, which everybody pushed him back on. And I suspect they pushed him back on it because what they know is that the moment you add one price cap, it drags the price of the other oil down in order to somehow balance out and compete with the forced amount that you're basically trying to sell and buy a product for. What will more likely happen is you just wouldn't get the product. I mean, think about what we're saying for the moment. If your economies are already in distress because of a 60% drop, and they're already in distress because you decided you wanted to have a coal ban and an oil ban, and you wanted to flirt with this idea of a gas ban. Okay, fair enough. You want to do all of that stuff. That's what you want to do. But all of you accepted that it is impossible for you overnight to flip a switch and find other suppliers, or for that matter, other supply at a certain cost, meaning you don't know whether you're going to get the supply, and you certainly aren't going to get it at a particular cost that was in any way commensurate with the amount that you were getting it from Russia. Meaning whatever your economy has got accustomed to, whatever your public got accustomed to in order for heating, for that matter for food, all of that is going to change. And it's going to change for the foreseeable future. Again, you're going to have to explain that to your population, why this was so important and why you were dedicating so much time to this particular pursuit that basically made their lives that much more miserable while not accomplishing either target, either in the war or, for that matter, in the economic war, considering it basically just reverb and hit you and your countries. This is lunacy. Does any of them really take the step and think to themselves, what would Russia do if we did that? When they stole the money, hundreds of billions of dollars of ruble, or hundreds of billions of dollars, but yes, equal to hundreds of billions of dollars, but basically stole the reserves, the Russian reserves. I mean, what did you think they were going to do when you decided you're not going to be able to use your currency? Meaning we're going to continue to get gas and oil from you, but we're not going to pay you for it. Why do you think? Like, it's lunacy. If you remember going back to the first time they decided we're going to have an economic war, my response was, why do you think that they're going to leave oil and gas alone, considering that is the one thing that you decided to leave off the table in the economic war? And now the new harebrained scheme is price caps. We're going to, and by the way, does that mean they're lifting sanctions? Is that what that means? Meaning, is this a way of trying to save face? That they're basically trying to say, all right, we can't do without the product. We can't do without the product. We can have this conversation in hushed tones from the standpoint of Biden and Macron. We can have those in hushed tones, but our economies are facing a complete and utter disaster, and we don't have it out in order to fix it. All right. We need Russian oil or gas. All right. We can't say that because it would be a repudiation of everything that we've done up to this point, even going back 50 years, meaning from the standpoint of NATO expansion and everything else. It would be a repudiation of all of it. It would make us look comically ridiculous considering the damage that would have caused to our basic countries and our governing coalitions. And then to have to come out after all of that damage have taken place and say, okay, now we're going to scale back the policy that we basically was running with beforehand. Okay, we can't do that. What if we do that, but we do it while trying to look muscular? What do you mean? Okay, what if that we say we will remove sanctions and we will pay you for this product, but we will pay you for this product at a modified price. So it's almost like a negotiation of sorts. Okay, we'll get rid of the sanctions. We can't live with the way that, the world is going now. The sanctions are too much. We're going to get rid of those. They're hurting our economies. But by taking this action, it makes it look as if they're being strong as they remove the sanctions. And again, you're more likely for them to not just give you the gas or the oil. We'll see. Who knows? I mean, this could be a negotiation of sorts where they are upping the amount that they're willing to pay to, let's say, market levels or close to market levels where it becomes, okay, fair enough. This is basically you paying more than what you were going to pay for it beforehand, so fair enough. It could be that, or they could be comically ridiculous about it and trying to cut the amount to some comically low number. Who knows? We'll have to see the details in regards to how they're going to basically try to operate this. But they would have to be able to lift sanctions in order to do that. And I suspect that the whole point of lifting sanctions is the feature that is not a bug, and that is done because it's almost a tacit admission that their economies can't function without the product, and they have no way out. You can't get it from OPEC. You can't get it from Venezuela. At the very least, I have a hard time believing they're going to give it to you. Iran's oil is already on the market at levels that were there before the sanctions were implemented. Where are you going to get the oil from, bro? And if you don't have anywhere to get it from because there are no suppliers on the planet, and I don't think you have asteroid mining anywhere, then you have to go back, tail between your legs, to the previous supplier. And if you do have to go back to the previous supplier, how do you deal with that politically? And is it possible that the way you deal with it politically is basically by saying, we will lift sanctions if you allow us to purchase gas and oil from you at a certain rate? We will give you this for your vital product. Now, the catch becomes, will Russia do that? Look, Moscow, this war needs to end. It needs to end. And the only reason the war is continuing is because the West is dumping billions of dollars into Ukraine, billions in weapons into Ukraine, not to mention the money itself just to keep the government propped up. It is basically a zombie government. All of these leaders know that Ukraine is losing on the ground. All of them get it through and through. German intelligence even make the point of saying they think the Donbass region will fall in weeks. To make it even worse, or that much more apt, you have more Ukrainian troops basically surrendering faster. If I'm not mistaken, Lizzie Chance is being surrounded as we speak, if not already. The speed of the event seems to be increasing as the morale of the Ukrainian military is decimated that much more. Meaning it seems that the speed of the advance is taking on a flavor or an energy of itself. And from the standpoint of this idea of potentially creating a strong point in, let's say, the Western Ukraine or mid Ukraine, where they can basically use it for incursions. I mean, this is, after all, Zelensky keeps saying, we're going to take back the Crimea, we're going to take back this, we're going to take back that. We'll fight with shovels if we need. All right, then stop asking for weapons if you're willing to fight with shovels. The point that I'm making here is, on the ground, the situation is dire. How do you end this war? How do you end this conflict? And if, yes, you're fighting a war from the standpoint of men and personnel with Ukraine, but the people who are basically keeping the war going are the West, then how do you attack the body that is keeping the conflict going? And the way you attack the body that's keeping the conflict going is by going after the thing that they basically need in order to do so: oil and gas. If your economies can't function, then your economies can't continue to give oil and revenue, or for that matter, keep the political coalition necessary for you to basically continue with this course of action. It's pressure. And so whether the West gives a decent price point or not is almost secondary to the point that they may all come with this option just as a way of putting pressure on the entities themselves that are keeping the conflict going. It is pointless. They see no way out. They just don't want to necessarily end it because they put so much political capital into it. And whatever conversations they're having behind the scenes, I strongly suspect that the language of the G7 of we're united and we're willing to go as far as necessary in order to win this, I suspect that that statement is crafted specifically because it is not true, that those economies are screaming. And whereas the U.S. is willing to accept all of this damage, is Europe willing to accept it to show how servile they are to U.S. interests? We'll see what happens. The devil is in the details, right? And we'll see how this unfolds. And I'm radically skeptical that this is going to have the effects that they want. And I suspect it's going to be like every other ignoble episode where they basically take an action. There's a boomerang effect that they were comically, ridiculously, completely caught rear and unaware of. And that they're going to scream, oh my God, Russia is touching us inappropriately in some particular fashion. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. Thanks all. Be back shortly.